Hey folks, Quillian here, and welcome to an episode of our Unity base building game series. And in a great example of things are hard when you're trying to talk, as soon as I stopped the video, it was like, oh, I know what was going on last time. So what you may remember from last time is that we ended up with this funny issue that I couldn't quite figure out, and I was getting kind of confused as to what was going on here. How does path A star suddenly become null? And of course, the answer is that dest tile over here is a property, and when we set a destination tile, it invalidates our pathing as part of the same step. So there's a couple of things here. Is it correct that changing our destination tile should invalidate our path? Well, yeah, I think it is. I think that's still okay, but we may be getting, because of a couple of things. First of all, because we have a property that's got the lowercase thing, maybe what we should do is have the property have an uppercase tile, or maybe instead of the destination tile being able to set, being set this way, maybe instead what we should be doing is having a function, like a public function, or I don't know, private function, I'm not sure what, which is more called like set destination or something like that, to make it a little bit more explicit that, this is a function where there could be side effects and so on and so forth. In any case, I think it's still fine that path A star invalidates with this, or alternatively, what we could do, instead of invalidating it here, what we could do is when we're doing our movement, is we check to see if we need to invalidate it. For example, if we check that if destination tile is not equal to the final tile in path A star, that means we've got to throw away path A star because it is pointing in the wrong place. Although most of the time, with this, as long as we set a destination tile and invalidates the path, that makes perfect sense. So I think I'm going to leave it in there, although the capital D might help us remember in the future. But more importantly over here is we have to make sure that that we don't invalidate that when we set our destination tile, when we know that path A star is going to be set to null, so we're going to want to save it. So maybe what we want to do is instead, so we can get rid of these extra little what checks in here, right over there. And so what we may want to do is change the order of these things and do something like path A star. And then in this little part, I can say something like new path. We can make sure that the path is all good. We can set the destination tile to this, and then put in a note of, since we already have a path calculated, let's just save that. And then we can set path A star to be equal to the new path, like this. And that logically will suit fine. And it's just the side effect of the fact that destination tile was invalidating path A star, was leading to that weird, and very unexpected kind of behavior over there. And now we will, oh yeah, sorry, I was testing something for today's tutorial. Right over here. Let me get back to that in a second. Stop, play, load. And we're going to verify that everything is working like we want it to over here. And there we go, and that looks okay. And indeed, we should be saving ourselves a repath finding at this point, which I think is a lot better. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Well, as may have been hinted by my little check over here to confirm things, we are going to work with multiple characters now. It's a change that we've had to do for quite some time. We need to make sure that everything works with multiple characters. I suspect there will be a few little glitches here and there. Not only that, but I would like some sort of display or information about our character that we have there. The ability to select a character, for example, which we don't currently have right now. We can't even mouse over. When we mouse over, our little tooltip over here doesn't tell us anything about the character that we're standing on. It only tells us information about the world around it. So I think it would be nice maybe if the tooltip also told you something about the character. But we'd probably like the ability to select. Right now, in the current mouse mode, nothing happens, right? There's no building, there's nothing that goes on there. And I think it would be nice to be able to click on things and get context. And that includes clicking on a piece of furniture. That includes clicking on a unit. And in fact, while we do have the deconstruct furniture command over here, which apparently does not update the wall. We'll have to take a look at that. Oh, now that's interesting behavior. Oh. I wonder if that has anything to do with what we did. Since there's no tiles, You should not be pathfinding over there. I mean, this makes sense here, but when we just have a map, over here, there's no stuff on the ground. So when we put down the basic wall jobs, they actually just shouldn't move. Oh, we've already found a little bit of bug. So there's going to be a lot of that. I don't think this is a multiple character bug. In fact, we could confirm it quite easily if I just comment this out over here and hit play. So right now, we're only creating multiple characters when it's a new map. If I go and build a basic wall over there. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that, buddy. What's going on? So get closest item of type throws an error over here, which returns a null path, which is then on line 182 of the character. I don't think we do anything with that. The path is null. Path is null. Right? Path is null. We have no path to object of type blah, which actually means we should cancel the job, doesn't it? Cancel the job since we have no way to get any raw materials. Is it called cancel job? Abandon job. We abandon the job and then return. There we go. So that has nothing to do with multiple characters. It was just sort of a little outstanding thing over there. Basic wall. There you go. And now our character, we're going to get a lot of errors because it's just requeuing the job, trying to find something. I mean, we have a lot of noise that happens when we've got this invalid job status like this, but none of these are actual errors. So, boom, good. In fact, I can probably change this one at the very least to a log because it's really not an error at all. There's just literally nothing. Available. Cool. Okay, good. Or there's no path to it. Either way is possible. Either there exists no goods whatsoever of the type we're looking for, or there may exist some, but we can't reach it. Both of which are not actual errors, but they are things that we have to bail about. Okay, so we've got that. Good. So with multiple characters over here, we've got that. Now, you'll notice when we hit play, we do get the extra characters. If I hit load, I'm back down to 1, and that's because our characters actually do get saved with the world. So we've got a new world over here. So if we go and say, I guess instantiate a pathfinding test, and then hit save, and then hit load, we are now getting a world with 3 characters in it, including the steel plates from before. So let's see what happens if we try to build the wall now. Everyone should scatter and work on individual things. That is indeed the case. And they started grabbing from the nearby clumps that didn't have quite as much material. We need to make sure that there's no weirdness with, like, the stuff around, is there? Because that's a stack of 3, that's a stack of 4. And actually, I guess you're on a stack, so it makes sense that they can all just start building right away because they're actually all grabbing from different stacks. And you finish your wall right away because you picked up 5 from there, but the rest didn't pick up quite enough. Okay, that's working actually a lot better than I expected. And it looks really cool! Now, our characters don't attempt to pathfind around each other or anything like that. Now, 2 things. One, you wouldn't use the pathfinding system to try to skirt around characters, generally speaking, especially not other moving characters, because they're not, that's the other thing we're going to adjust, is we're going to make it so that the job gets worked adjacently instead of standing on the tile. Maybe I'll look at that first, we'll see. What you can do, there's a difference between pathfinding and avoidance. And so the idea being, if you're pathfinding to a destination and you're going to be bumping into someone on the way and you don't want that, then you actually have to sort of skirt around. You may want to retain your old pathfinding information, but instead try to skirt around people in different ways, or at that point and that point only, do a pathfinding check. So, and basically maybe in the pathfinding system, it'll only try to avoid someone that you're about to bump into now. Because the thing is, you're not going to avoid someone, if you're trying to get, say, here, right, and there's someone standing here right now, well, by the time you get there, they'll probably have moved. Still, most games don't actually pathfind it around other characters. You might do something when you're actually resolving the move. You might get the movement rate slow down if you're having to push past someone, which kind of makes sense. I mean, you can imagine like a narrow doorway. Having another character trying to use the door at the same time as you doesn't necessarily block the door. Just each one of you are a little bit slower as you squeeze by each other or something like that. You can also do a priority system where, someone is polite enough to let another person go by and so on and so forth. We're going to deal with that later, and it may not be a thing. Honestly, most games don't really have to care about that kind of stuff. Even when you're talking about enemy units, you may not have to worry about actually having units block each other, and instead it's more like, well, if you're going to try to walk by me, I'm going to take a swing at you as you go by. So, there's balance in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the extra characters in here, and we're going to keep trying to develop a couple other things, and we're going to see if any glitches appear with the characters in here. Here, we can maybe develop this world a little bit more. I don't remember if I did it on stream. I fixed the door. Oh, no, I did do that. The door orientation bug. And then what I'm going to do is I want to set some jobs here, but and then I want to save and load. And I just want the characters to be, you know, sort of in a slightly different area, which is what I'm going for over here. And again, if I try to build basic walls over here, does anything weird happen with the doorway? Nope, everything is fine. The door stays open for the other requests. God damn, this is starting to look cool. So yeah, people are clumping up a little bit if they happen to be passing through the door at the same time. Is that a bad thing? I'm not sure that it is. One way to avoid clumping without actually having to work too hard about it is we could make it so that, now we do have a mechanic, for example, the door. The door counts as nothing for the pathfinding system. The pathfinding system considers the doorway to be a tile that you're perfectly fine to allow it to walk through, but we do have this mechanic when it comes to walking into the tile. There's that sort of waiting that happens, and we could have something like that. If you're trying to enter, oh wow, that gets really laggy. What's happening now is we're getting spammed the fact that things are being re-added to the queue here. So we're gonna look into this a sec, because I think it really slowed down the game quite a bit, and it's very spammy. And these are kind of legit errors. They're not errors, and they do spam a lot. Actually, I think maybe to avoid this spam, I'm gonna put in for the characters when the characters are looking for a job. I think we're gonna have a cooldown. I think I'm going to have some sort of like float that's something like job search cooldown, which starts at 0. And normally what I would do is I would say, so something very simple like this. If job search cooldown is greater than 0, then don't look for job now. And we just return. And if it's less than or equal to 0, then we are going to search for the job. But here we're going to set the cooldown and say, listen, you can only look for a job every quarter second. Or, and this is often a really good idea, is throw in a little random. And we're going to say, wait somewhere between a 10th to a 20th of a second before you search for a job again. And that way the various characters, I think here we need to do something like Unity engine dot that, because that random, it gets confused if you also have using system has its own random, but we want to use the Unity version of it. And that way the different characters sort of break up their delay, and it can really help. And just by doing that, you get something a lot less spammy. The problem is, at some point in here, ideally we'd like to do something like job search cooldown minus equal time.delta time. But this, now we are using functions that belong to the Unity engine. This means a certain knowledge of the Unity world that is not really appropriate in our character over here. So what do we do? I mean, do we want to pass delta time around? I don't know. I mean, I guess here we do have the delta time. I don't think I want to pass delta time to the update do job, but maybe what I'll do, actually, maybe get new job. We'll literally do that. We'll get a new job. But instead, in the do job code over here, that's where we'll introduce all the cooldowns. If my job is equal to null, job search cooldown goes over here. And we'll decrement that over there. And if my job is equal to null, then we process this. But if the job search cooldown is above 0, we don't actually do anything with it yet. And then we set it, and then we search for a new job. So there we go. So we can bail. Here we don't have a job, but it's not time for the cooldown yet, so we just bail, and then eventually we'll get it. So now, things should be a lot less spammy when we run out of material for something. So I guess I'll just do this, and then do that. So we are getting the messages. And it's still pretty frequent, actually. Actually, a lot more frequent than expected. Which, I mean, I guess might be fine, but we could also just increase this. Tell you what, let me increase this to like 5 to 10 seconds, just to make sure that I haven't goofed something weird here. This should really make it so that our characters don't look for things very, very frequently. And that's indeed the case. Is that they're only searching for a job from time to time. They still spam a lot of messages. And I think we can still trim this down a lot. Like this error message here, the only time it ever comes back is when we re-add something to a queue, so we can probably just ignore that. Get closest inventory of type. This is not an error at all. It's a perfectly legitimate thing, which will happen, so we don't have to put in an error. I think we had that pretty heavily for a lot of debugging. Here too, we don't necessarily need to log this detail. That's probably fine. And this adding job to queue is something, again, that we had in for actual debugging at some time. I can trim that down a lot. And so I do want the delay for the job search, because especially if it's a big job queue, and especially if it's a lot of work to find a valid job, I don't want to be spamming the hell out of it. But we can trim that down. And so I want the random time to go back to being, again, somewhere between like a 1/10 and maybe a 1/2 of a second delay between searching for new jobs. And even then, that's going to seem pretty instantaneous. And if you play a lot of these games, you'll often see that little bit of a delay. You know, people only check for new jobs. Hell, it might be every 5 or 10 seconds, honestly. But having any sort of delay, so it's not literally spamming it every single frame, is quite handy. So we'll build a basic wall over here. And yeah, so we're not getting our log spammed with information about the fact that they aren't able to do this job. But still, these characters are only searching for the job every 1/10 to 1/2 second, which is a lot better for just not crushing the CPU. And here, they will respawn pretty damn quick, actually. And the job cooldown goes down all the time. So if they're doing another job, the job cooldown will go down to 0. Although, there is something to be said. If we get a job... actually, there we go. We'll only set the job cooldown if we didn't find a job. If we got a job, then we're going to execute it, we're going to complete it, and then most likely, because of this countdown timer, that, which we could process inside of here as well, we would have finished it instantly anyway. Hell, technically, I think this would be perfectly fine, but we'll leave it outside, and that's going to be okay. And that way, if we found a job successfully, then job search cooldown is just going to be left at 0, or whatever it is, so that we can run it the next time around instantly. But if it fails to find a job, that's the only time that we set a cooldown. And then we could really afford to set that cooldown quite a bit longer and more comfortably there. So this still seems okay. We still haven't gotten any weird errors with the fact that we've got multiple characters, which seems a bit odd to me, but hooray. Maybe, you know what? There may have been, because I thought I tested it at some point in the past, and there were a couple of weird errors, but that could have been stuff that we've just cleaned up along the way that instantly helped fix the multiple character stuff. So I think what I would like to do next is the ability to sort of select something. And maybe what we do with our little tooltip is we change it so that if there's nothing selected, it's just showing you the mouse over information, but if we click on something, maybe it locks in there. So I would like to be able to click on a piece of furniture and have it select. And ultimately, it'll be the same thing with the characters. We're going to start with that, and then we'll introduce a box selection as well. So what would we have for that? We do have a mouse controller, which is aware of that, and it responds to basically to clicks. I mean, update dragging, update movement. Dragging is if we are dragging our middle mouse button. Is it middle and right? I don't remember. Middle and right mouse button. Either one of the two allows us to drag. And oh, that's not the dragging. That's not what I'm talking about. It's camera movement is the one I'm talking about, where we pan like this. So there's that. So with dragging is when we are clicking, holding the left mouse button, we're dragging out a square. Now this only happens when we're actually in build mode. So you can see right over here, if we're not in build mode, we bail. We bail out. So we don't do anything at all if we happen to go over a UI element. We don't stop the drag. We just don't do any processing. And if that's not true, then we clean up the stuff. And if we've left the build mode, then we turn at that point, and then we do some stuff. But so what we want to do is the ability to update a selection, which really happens. Well, I guess it's fine. We've got a mouse mode there. So let's do another function. Void update selection. So this is first we check to make sure we're not in build mode, or rather that we're in selection mode. So this handles us left clicking on furniture or characters to set a Set a selection. God damn it. Selection. There we go. So we have to make sure if current mode not equals mouse mode dot select, then we return right away. But otherwise, how do we figure out what we click on? Well, we've got all this stuff put in already. We've got functions to turn our mouse position into a current position. We actually, current frame position, screen to world point. So we've got that, but I want to turn our position to a tile. There we go. Get tile at. That's what we want to use, right? Get tile at converts a world X and Y. Well, yeah. Let me think here. It converts a world space. Well, actually, not a world space X and Y. It just gives you, because these are integers. So how do we go from the mouse? It's like this. Oh, I think I would like a helper function for this. We should really have something for that. Ideally with a vector too, which this is sort of what we're doing with the floor. Yeah, I don't know. We really don't have a... Oh, get mouse over tile. There we go. That's what I'm thinking about. Current frame position. Okay. See, I knew I wasn't going crazy. So, update selection. So really this only happens if input dot get mouse button down. Only if we clicked down this frame, or potentially up. There's pros and cons to both. I guess if we go up on 0. So, we just released the mouse button. So that's our cue to update our selection. So we get the mouse, the mouse over tile. So tile under mouse is equal to this. And then what does it mean to select it? Can you select any old tile? Can you only select tiles with furniture? Because I mean, there's really a difference to that. Like, what's the difference between selecting the tile versus selecting the furniture in the tile versus selecting the inventory that's in the tile versus selecting the character? Keep in mind, a tile can have a character standing on top of some inventory items, standing on top of furniture, standing on a tile. So what can you select? And if you compare something like RimWorld, you can usually select just about everything. Well, in RimWorld, I don't believe you can ever select the ground itself. And in Dwarf Fortress, you actually have different cursor modes, depending on what key you put in, which determines... So you never really select something exactly in Dwarf Fortress, but rather you can have a few different cursor modes. You move your cursor around with the arrow keys, generally speaking. And then whatever the cursor is on, depending on what mode, that shows you different stuff. It's either describing the ground or it's giving you... information about like the piece of furniture or the workshop that's under the tile. And also if you're in that mode and your cursor is over, say, a workshop, then you've got an additional menu that shows up where you can queue up different types of jobs, for example. But in RimWorld, while you can't, I don't think you can select the ground tile. There's plenty of situations where you could have a character, more than one character, honestly, in a single tile, and standing on top of an inventory item as well. And every time you click in the tile, it'll cycle through each thing in that spot. That's really obvious when you've got someone lying in bed, because are you trying to select the person, or are you trying to select the bed that they're lying in? Well, every time you click, it'll select a different thing. And I think it'll even cycle through inventory in that place. So we need some sort of logic for that, based on what our click is, which I don't think we have to like have really an index or anything. It should be more like, so we have some sort of selection, right? Some sort of, we may want to have it be a class that is like selection info, and it has the ability to point to, so what am I talking about? I'm saying, let's say we did a class and it's like selection info. If I'm going to do it, it's not going to be here, but I'm just doing it for the sake of argument. So we have something like this, and then it's got place for like inventory. So inv, or tile, t, or furniture, f, or whatever. These are terrible names. Fern, tile, something like that. Or character. I can't do car. That's no good. So CHA or something like that, right? We have something like this. And then we say, okay, so we've just clicked on a tile. Do we already have something selected in that tile? And we have some sort of order that we tend to go things in. In fact, what we may want to do is list this in an order that we're kind of comfortable in. So imagine something like that. And so we check to see, listen, the selection info. So we've got the tile under here. Is there any chance we already have one of these things selected? And if so, check the next things. For example, if we already have, so selection info, my selection, all right? If my selection dot inventory is equal to tile under mouse. Oh yeah, these have to be public or something like that. And the class should probably be public, or I don't know. I don't even know if that's true. But do something like this. There, get rid of that error. If tile under mouse dot inventory, then now this is not the code we're writing. Don't type along with this. Then we need to select the next thing in the cycle, right? So then it's something like, you know, if tile under mouse dot furniture not equals null, then what we would do in that case is we would change our my selection to be equal to the tile under mouse dot furniture, and we'd update my selection dot inventory to be equal to null. And then we go through this. So if there's no furniture, then we just select the tile, and so on and so forth. If you have the tile selected, then you're going to check for a character, then inventory, then furniture. And of course, if there's none of those, then you just loop around and you end up at the tile itself. So I'm trying to think out like the most elegant way to structure this, because I would hate a big series of nested ifs. Now, if these were all derived from the same base class, then it wouldn't be too bad, because we could have everything be part of an array. We could have an array of objects that sort of cycles through. You know, because yeah, everything in C# is derived from object. I mean, we could have this stuff in tile, right? So you might always want to check, so public tile. And when you select a tile, so this is always like, I guess, an array of 4 thingies. Well, I don't know. I guess for this, you just have it be a generic array. And then when you click on a tile, you do something like, if my selection dot tile is not equal to tile under mouse, then we have just selected a brand new tile. Clear out all the, or reset the info. So let me get rid of this. So what we're looking to do is set my selection to be equal to a new, my selection dot stuff is equal to a new array of objects where the values are tile under mouse, and we'd have to get the order right, dot character. Oh, it doesn't actually track that. Okay, let's ignore that for a second. Furniture, tile under mouse, dot inventory, and then I guess just the tile itself. So it's sort of self-referential. All right, so you have something like that, and then you have something like public int sub selection, which would default to 0, and I guess we'd reset it to 0 as well. Well, that's not entirely true, actually. I guess you'd start. You do something like that, and then you do something like, I'm not even sure I've got the syntax right, so don't write anything in quite yet. I guess we do something like for I is less than my selection dot stuff in tile dot length, And then we'd say something like, if my selection dot stuff in tile at I is not equal to null, then my selection dot subselection is equal to I. And we can break out of this loop. So the idea being, we create this array which contains, well, eventually, like character, furniture, inventory, tile under mouse. And then we find the first one of those things that isn't null. And we start that as our selection. And then otherwise, else, then we want to select the next thing, right? This is the same tile we already have selected. So cycle the sub-selection to the next non-null item. Note that the tile sub-selection can never be null, kind of by definition, so we know we'll always find something. And so what we want to do is something like, well, the most we'd ever have to cycle. So while, let's see how we want to do this. Do. And we're going to do a loop while my selection stuff in tile at my selection dot sub selection is equal to null. So we're going to keep looping if our current selection is null. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to increase our sub selection. So we're going to increment it by 1 from whatever it was before. So worst case scenario, this tile doesn't have anything in it other than the tile itself, which means, so again, eventually there's going to be this, like, you know, this extra one here. This one represents character, right? So it's character, furniture, inventory, the tile itself. So if the only thing in the tile is the tile itself, there's no inventory, there's no furniture, and there's no character standing there, then this is going to start off with a subselection value of 3. Oops, that's right, and I forgot this. We got to do a modulo over here based on the length. There we go. So this is going to start with a value of 3, because obviously arrays start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to start at 3. We're going to plus it, which means this is actually equal to 4, but because of the modulo in here, it's going to loop back around to 0. So we're going to, this is yeah, I guess, you know what? Hold on. I think it would be better if we do this my selection dot subselection plus 1. That way we can ensure that the subselection number is always within bounds. Do the modulus there. There we go. There we go. So again, so this subselection is currently 3. It's getting a plus 1 here, which brings it to 4. But 4 divided by the length of 4 leaves a remainder of 0, which is what this is. So it's actually sending it back to 0, which is character, which is null. So it's going to loop through this again. Add plus 1. It's going to be checking the furniture, which in this case is null. Again, we're taking the example of an empty piece of tile. So it keeps looping, and eventually it will loop to the point where this gets set to 3 again, which is this 4th item in the list, which is the tile itself, which can never be null if there's any sort of selection. It literally doesn't make sense otherwise. So we've got that. Although, presumably there needs to be some sort of way to clear a selection that once you have done it. I guess probably something like the escape key, which we already check in a few places. So right over here, for example. So if we actually have released the escape key, then what we're going to do is... Actually, I don't even know if we care about what mode we're in. I think if the select key was released, then we are going to set my selection to be equal to null. Like that. I mean, I realize we don't even instantiate my selection yet. Or, yeah, I guess that's fine. If, first of all, if tile under mouse is equal to null, which is certainly possible, then, you know, no valid tile under mouse. So we just return. So we've got that. If my selection let's see here. Is it ever okay that it's just null? Do we always want to do something? No, because we want to be able to deselect it, so it's null there. So if my selection is equal to null, or my selection.tile is not equal to this tile, then it's a brand new selection. So we set my selection equal to a new selection info, and then we fill out some stuff for it. There we go. That's good. And here we actually have to check. No, we don't have to check that selection is null over here. If we got here, we know that selection can't be null. So we're good. So we create it there. And again, that sort of kind of works. I do want to make sure that we're not over a UI element. All right? If we're over a UI element, then we don't want any mouse clicks to be interpreted as a selection. Or I'm going to put it after with the assumption that this might be a little bit more demanding of a call than just comparing, you know, basically an enum over here. Okay, all of a sudden, I think this is kind of sort of working. I mean, obviously there's no visual feedback going on. If I load, I mean, in theory, stuff is happening. I guess I can check by doing something like debug.log. Actually, I guess I don't think this function is being called. I just realized. Right? Update selection is probably not being called. We're going to want that in the update over here. And just same thing. I'm just going to say update selection. Okay. Yeah, visually, nothing will happen, but we should. 33333. But here, it should toggle between... Oh! It don't. Why is that? It's always, in this case, using the furniture, and here it's always using the inventory. It's never cycling to the tile info underneath it. Brr. So the question is, do I have a bug here and it's always a new tile, or do I have a bug here? I'm guessing the latter, but let's see. So it should say new tile, and it does. And oh, it says new tile every time. Wait, it never recognizes this as being the same tile. Oh, because I never set the tile. Tile is equal to tile under mouse. There we are. Load. There you go. It's got the inventory selected. Now it's got the tile itself. Then back to the inventory tile. See how it's alternating between 2 and 3? And here it'll alternate between 1 and 3. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So we can just get rid of... I'll just comment it out for now. It's fine. Let's do that and that. And so our selection system, for a single selection, we don't have box selection put in, but for a single selection, is being selected in the background. We're just not showing it to the user. So the next episode, what we'll do is we will get some sort of interface to show that. I would like, I don't know, some sort of box or something around the tile itself to show that this tile and or something within it is currently selected. And then on top of that, we'll do something probably with this little tooltip to show what the currently selected item is or something. I mean, I guess, trying to see, like, I guess normally it's fine that it tracks, but I guess if you click, it should probably lock and stay there. And if you move away at that point, it probably shouldn't give you any of this anymore. It should probably just stick to whatever was there before. And there should be a line to like tell you specifically what's selected. So as you click through, it'll alternate. Or maybe we do, this is really is a debug tooltip. And it's not the sort of thing that should be shown to the user necessarily. It should maybe just be whatever you've clicked on. What I might do is leave this here as a persistent debug tooltip so we can compare room indexes and whatever, but then provide another tooltip that is the one that the user would actually see with a selection triggered. And that might be for the best. But in any case, we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you very much for watching another episode, folks, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey, thank you to all the June patrons who support these videos through July and early August, and especially these Mike Check supporters. We've got Steven Stagger again, and Michael McClintock again, and Kale the Quick again. Lots of agains. Drazion, Adjective, Jason Yanity, Wes Olenbeving, Craig Mortel, Neil Blakey Milner, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Aaron Toyvson, Marius Fieldvold, Jan Torre Vel, Ole Peter Talgo, Julien Auger Lafont, Petrie Michaela, and absolutely everyone who has watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed. Thanks for continuing to make this a reality, and I'll see you next time.